Hey, I absolutely love the venue, and it's great to be here because when I started my previous company, Usabilla, about 7 years ago, I saw user spots as one of the first customers. So it's amazing, and I'm thrilled. It's an honor to be here in this room. What I'm going to tell you today, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Human. Human is the company that started 3.5 years ago, and with Human, we try to inspire people to be more active every day. And this story starts out basically in the forest. The forest of the Presidio, so this is the city of San Francisco. And on the left side, you see the Golden Gate Bridge, and there's this huge park area. So after I left Usabilla on day-to-day, as a day-to-day CEO, I took a team with 3 people, and we rented a small house in the woods of San Francisco. And the only thing that we could do there was travel the bridge, go to the headlands, ride, run, and be active, and at the same time try to build our company in the city itself. So our first assumption was, 3.5 years ago, can we build the Nike Fuel Band or a Fitbit in app form? So you have all these bands, these wearable devices with an accelerometer, basically a step counter, that started somewhere in the 80s with the mechanical device of counting steps. And at the same time, we carry around this single thing in our pocket, which is way more smarter than any of those rubber bands. So can we use this thing day to day, 24/7, to turn it into a passive feedback loop? And we all did that through data-inspired design. So data has been the core of our company internally, and we try to sort of avoid to show that data to our users as much as we can, and at the same time learn from every single step along the way. So how can we use the location services, the GPS sensors, so which is mostly Wi-Fi networks, Bluetooth, and some GPS satellites, the motion of your device, and turn that into a passive feedback loop for our users? And the funny thing is, when I started Human, I was completely new to the health and fitness space. I didn't have a clue about what I was doing, and I didn't have a clue about the space. I was a very avid athlete myself. I was using all these products like Runkeeper and Strava and some others. But at the same time, I didn't have a clue what this space was sort of what was really important in this space. The previous company, Usabilla, we tried to make the same passive feedback loop. So you embed one line of JavaScript code on a web page, and it allowed visitors to give feedback on specific parts of the page. And one of the things that we discovered while building the company was that it is extremely important to make that sort of as passive as possible. So the moment that as a researcher you have to set up these tests, invite people, get the results, analyze the results, and then get back into the loop again, it's really cumbersome. The moment that you make this passive and it constantly keeps fueling the circle, that's the moment that it becomes interesting for a company. So this was our very first prototype. So this was an app that you installed on, in this case, the iPhone 5. That was the time that we started. And it only had one feature, so this big blue button in the middle. If you hit it, it started collecting location updates every second, which basically meant that there was a small group of people that were basically donating their battery life to Human. Within 2.5 hours, 3 hours, we drained your battery completely empty, but we had the data that we needed to optimize our algorithms. And this is what it looks like, what it looked like behind the scenes. So this is my personal data, only accessible to me. And this was an overview of the motion patterns of the device. So we started plotting the activity, and we started trying to figure out what kind of data we could collect while running in the background of your phone 24/7. At the same time, we tried to present the data to our users. So we started building timelines. We tried to figure out when you were walking, when you were riding, when you were sleeping, motorized transport, all these different patterns that learn you something about your everyday activity. And we started playing with different goals, but at the same time, we sort of had this idea as in, hey, this is not what we're going after, because most days for most people are pretty much the same. So you get up, you get to the office, either by car, by transport, or on a bike, or walking, whatever you prefer. You sit behind your desk for 8 to 10 hours, then you go home the same way, and that's pretty much every day the same. Some people travel a lot, but it's sort of the luxury that most of us don't have. So we started presenting these timelines, but these timelines were pretty much all the same. Same time, different iterations, different product versions. And bit by bit, we started to play with different types of visualizing these goals and different types of visualizing your activity to make it more interesting. But at the same time, after about 2 weeks, no one was using the product. So they knew what they were doing. Of course, they knew what they were doing, because if I ask you, what did you do this morning, what did you do yesterday, you pretty much know what you were doing. So there was no real magic behind this. So we provided you with an overview of what you did, but that overview was just not interesting. And the fact is, most people don't care about this stuff. So we all make them believe that tracking is super important, and it's sort of to stay on top of your health, and giving these insights about your everyday life are sort of the magic that you need. Most people just don't care. There's a small group of people, often people like us, that are focused on stats, focused on metrics, that do care about this stuff. And at the same time, if you try to apply the same principles to a very, very large audience, they don't care. My mom doesn't care if she walked 4.5 or 4.3K. She doesn't care if she did 10,000 steps or 10,200 steps. She does care about feeling good about herself. So we have this great technology. We built this tracker. It was roughly 2.5 years ago. We could identify every single activity during the day, presented in a timeline, which is pretty much black magic, especially back in the days, without too much battery impact, but we didn't have a clue what was next. And then we ran into this little movie.
So I have a big interest in preventive medicine, which can mean a lot of things, from cancer screening to eating more fiber to having a good social network, and I mean that in the old sense of the word. Weighing less, drinking less, smoking less, controlling your blood pressure, cholesterol, and so on and so forth. So all these things are incredibly important, and I wouldn't want you to minimize your efforts in any one category, but I want to know what comes first. What has the biggest impact? What has the biggest return on investment? What makes the biggest difference to your health? So I did my research, and I found an answer, at least for me, and it's tricky because all these things are sort of overlapping. But I picked out this intervention, and because of its breadth, it worked for so many different health problems, and that's what I found so cool about it. So just to kind of walk you through a quick list. So this intervention in patients with knee arthritis who receive 1 hour of treatment 3 times a week reduced their rates of pain and disability by 47%. In older patients, it reduced progression to dementia and Alzheimer's by around 50%. For patients at high risk of diabetes, and coupled with other lifestyle interventions, it reduced progression to frank diabetes by 58%. Following over 10,000 Harvard alumni for over 12 years, those that had the intervention had a 23% lower risk of death than those who didn't get the treatment. It's the #1 treatment of fatigue, and of course, the kind of outcome of choice there, my favorite outcome is quality of life, which is really all of the above, and really about making your life better. And this treatment has been shown over and over again to improve quality of life. So the question is, what's the medicine, and what is 23.5 hours? So the medicine was exercise, mostly walking, so not triathlon.
So you can watch the full movie on YouTube if you search for 23.5. So what if we just throw overboard all these ideas that we had around goal setting and setting your own goals and providing you a timeline and getting these amazing insights in your day, and make it about one single goal, which is 30 minutes of activity every single day? What if we just throw away everything that we designed and start building this one interface that only gives you this one goal of 30 minutes? There's no personal goal, it's just one single goal for all of us, 30 minutes of everyday activity. That's how we started the Daily 30. This is the very first version of the app that we introduced, and sort of this is, to be honest, the second version, because the first version on the App Store was almost the same, but after we introduced it, we ended up with a 1.5-star rating within roughly 3 weeks. It took us about 1.5 years to recover from that, and that was because we didn't really nail the minimum viable product, because I truly believe there's no such thing as a minimal viable product. The thing is, how can you align the users and what's truly important to them on the broad scale? So it's not about having this app with minimum functionality. It's about having the app and providing everything around it to make you feel good about your everyday activity. And that's pretty much all in details. So what makes us human? We try to create an environment that inspires people to be active. So instead of focusing on the technical goals and counting steps and throwing as much metrics and stats and charts at users as we can, we try to make it really about inspiring people. Because this goal is the same for everyone. It's 30 minutes. We tell you what to do. And that's the magic of it. So there's no choice, there's no 60, of course there's a 60 and a 90, but there's no adaptive goal based on what you do, like the Apple Watch offers, because we believe that if we give you the goal, it becomes way more powerful. This is the stuff that users sort of share with us, and we constantly listen to them and to their feedback, and try to interweave that into our product, while at the same time ignore as much as we can. So it's mostly about inspiration. If you see the words that they pick, it's inspiration, motivation, it makes me feel good about myself, I want to have fun, it's inspiring, it's family, it's connecting people, and all these little things give us nudges to design the app in a better way. And of course, you also get this, especially on the App Store. I pretty much had to get really used to that not to open my laptop at 11 p.m. to do some customer support, because it makes you really sad for the rest of the evening. So Human is about positivity, inspiration, and personality. And the funny thing is, when we designed the interface, we didn't really know what we were doing in that sense. So we came up, okay, let's make that single goal, 30 minutes, the only thing in the interface, but that's only today. So how can we incorporate more of your week into it? And the funny thing is, the check marks at the bottom became the most powerful instrument. Because it's not about that check mark today, it's about the check mark that you didn't make today that will be haunting you for the rest of the week. And now we had basically entered this big black hole. We built this amazing app, we got featured by Apple, amazing number of downloads, completely surpassing all our expectations, but at the same time we didn't have a clue what to do next, because it was so simple. So everything that we would be adding was more complicated. So on iOS 8, we became best of the App Store. We won an award from Apple. I had 100 million activities every single month, but at the same time, we didn't know what to do next. So what do you do with terabytes of activity data every month? So all these people publish to our servers, we anonymize that data, and we try to get insights out of that. And then we started digging into the data. And this is when we sort of also had to come up with a way to introduce Android. So we had this successful app on iOS, but at the same time, we didn't know what was next. But a new platform, Android, where we didn't have any users, where we could experiment whatever we wanted, and sort of play on the theme of the data that we collected. So how can we turn this data that we collect into something more magical for all of us? So our search for the Holy Grail. Tracking becomes a commodity in the next few years. So it's absolute magic what you can do with a device right now. But it's still pretty hard to build a full timeline with maps and all the activity stats that works for everyone without hurting battery life too much. Yet at the same time, we know that Apple and Google and all these other platforms and the Apple Watch and other external tracking devices will provide us the insights that we need to build a timeline. So let's assume that the timeline is covered. What can we build on top of the data? And for us, it's about building this passive loop. So constantly feeding this loop where we learn from your data, turn it into better insights for you and the rest of the world. It's about the exponential value of your data. So with every minute that you use Human should become more valuable for you, but also for the people around you. Because the other people around you can help you to understand your everyday activity. So what story does our data tell? So all this data is basically human activity. So what you saw just now is a project that we did 1.5 years ago. Back then it was roughly 6 months of data. This is what we collect on a single day. So every single pixel on this screen is human activity. It's one of our users that has been active on that place. And the moment that we started sort of interweaving that into our product design, that's the moment that we completely shifted our focus from minutes and stats and metrics and the tables and charts that we used into sort of the geospatial area. Because if you think about human activity, it's about social connections. It's about you being in this room with all these other people, possibly a few of them with human installed. It tells you about the spaces that you visit. It tells you about where you're active. And if you use that in a very elegant way, you can also use it to inspire other people to be more active, without hurting privacy, of course. This is the city of Amsterdam, cycling. Just some examples, Cape Town. Full set of this. So this is funny, this is Schiphol. I'm not sure if anyone visited Amsterdam once. So this is people walking in the terminals of Schiphol. So this is 24 hours of data of Amsterdam. And you basically cover the entire map of Schiphol. So, and this is people running. So there's probably people late for their plane. Familiar city. This is transport in Istanbul, also about 24 hours of data. Covers the entire city. And this is data of 24 hours in the US. But every single hotspot that you see on this map is basically a center of human activity. And this is what we try to interweave into our next version of the product. So let's imagine that human is no longer about the 30 minutes and no longer about your activity. But how can we help you understand your everyday activity by comparing you to the other people around you? Because most of us are have very busy professional lives. We go to the office 5 days a week. We try to compensate for the sedentary lifestyle that we created ourselves by going to the gym twice a week, possibly, especially in the US. And then at the same time, we sit still most of the day. I'm already walking around here. This is activity as well. Taking your kids to the park is activity too. Taking a bike ride to the office or walking to the office or getting off one stop early on the metro station is exactly the type of activity that's just as valuable as everything else. And that's what you see on these maps. These are hotspots around cities where people are active or have sort-like patterns. How could we bring that into the app? So data is social. Data is about the hotspots in the city where people are active. It's about the running routes around town. It's about the parks that you visit. It's the gyms and other locations that you might find interesting. And we try to bring that into the app without hurting the privacy of our users, and at the same time make it all about you. So if I say social, the features that we designed for human are not social. This is the new version of the app, and this basically shows the people around you that are active. These are not real people, but you don't see them as real people because they're just dots on the map. At the same time, you know that these are people using human. These people already hit our goals today. How about you? The social features that we're designing right now, we started off with using clubs and trying to get people into small little social groups, trying to share their activity. The fact is, most people don't care about sharing their activity. It's not interesting to walk to the conference venue from the metro station. It's not something that you share. The epic bike ride of 100K that you did last week through the hills, that's something that you share, that you're proud of. But the everyday activity is often not something that you're proud of. But if you combine it and you start comparing it and you make it about the progress during the day, things become way more interesting. So we built this for Android first, and at the same time we had the iOS version. We opened up the version for iOS. The biggest part of this was only available in major cities first, and later on we opened to the rest of the world. This completely changed the way we think about activity as well, because activity for us is about creating active cities. How can we create this environment that inspires people to be active? And how could we fuel that back into the society, share the data with local government, so we can create this. I can tell you to take a bike here in Istanbul, but if there are no bike lanes, it might be a very risky operation. So data is not only the backbone of our product, it also really defines the way we think about solving this design challenge. We think that we can share anonymized data with local cities, not to only design these digital experiences, yet at the same time really help to make our physical world a better place as well. That's it. Thank you so much.